Hello everyone, this is Strawberry Podfic, and we're starting a new podfic today. I'm not abandoning Not Quite Twins, but the chapters are getting long, and I kind of want to do this other one. So we've got some trigger warnings, I think. Death mostly, because Izuku has an immortality quirk. It's Hysterical by Spark the Fangirl. Here's the summary. Midoriya's quirk isn't what anyone is expecting. That's not to say it's bad. Quite the opposite. It's just that things are put in a different perspective when you regularly die. Midoriya still dreams of becoming a hero, and when he does, well, no one was expecting this. Aizawa needs a vacation. All Might doesn't know how to handle his suicidal successor. Bakugou is the only student that isn't absolutely terrified of this cheerful, yet surprisingly deadly hero in training. And Midoriya? Well, he's a little bitch with no regard for personal safety, and someone decided to give him an enhanced strength quirk on top of it. AKA, Midoriya has an immortality quirk and no one knows how to handle it, including Midoriya himself. Might as well fake it till he makes it. What's the worst that can happen? Chapter 1. Glitter. Part 1. Whoopsie. Summary. Oh no, he died. Izuku Midoriya was 5 years old. I fumbled that right away. Izuku Midoriya was 5 when he died for the first time. The first time, mind you, because it sure as hell wouldn't be the last. His mother was standing outside their apartment talking to Mitsuki after Midoriya's dentist appointment. He wasn't paying much attention. Bakugou wasn't with her today, and besides, he hadn't been very nice ever since he had gotten his quirk, and Midoriya hadn't. Instead of listening to his mother talk, he decided to play with the red bouncy ball he had gotten from the dental office. Midoriya would throw it as hard as he could against the sidewalk, and then fumble to catch it as it fell back down. He did this over and over and over again. It was just entertaining enough to keep his focus. This time, he was trying to see if he could bounce it higher than the sapling in front of the building. He wound up getting ready to throw it with an internal Delaware smash. He chucked it down with all his might. The ball soared up, higher than even the tree. Midoriya grinned until he realized that the ball's trajectory had it now heading into the street. His eyes widened as he ran to the curb, determined to grab the ball back. As it rolled across the street, he chased after it, his only thought being that his mother would be so mad if he lost his new toy. She wouldn't be, of course. I had no idea why he thought that, but in his defense, he was only 5. The ball was only a few feet away. Izuku could almost reach it. He crouched down, hand outstretched, and splat. He didn't feel any pain, only a slight tingle across his whole body as he watched red leak out of his limp body. That probably shouldn't be happening, he thought. Then everything went black. And then he opened his eyes. It was a bit disorienting, to be honest. The last thing he remembered was a car and someone screaming. Had it been him? He couldn't remember. For the record, it was his mother. Don't blame her, though. She had just watched her son get run over and die, after all. And then his mother was clutching his face, sobbing, and there was the car, and Bakugou's mother and his red ball, and in the gutter across the street. And he thought that he remembered red, but he couldn't see any blood, and... You're alive?! It was his quirk. After a huge mess and lots of tears, Midoriya couldn't help himself when he saw his mother crying, and a very strange conversation with the man who had been driving. Ingo drove him to see a specialist across the city. This was probably because the pediatrician they had seen a year prior was clearly incompetent, and also a bit of a jerk. Who just outright crushes a kid's dream like that? But I digress. Could you perhaps elaborate a bit on how Izuku looked right after the incident? Inko sat up straighter and sniffled a bit. He wasn't moving, and so he rushed over and she sniffled again. There was blood everywhere, but when I got closer, I realized that it was, well, shimmery. Shimmery? Inko nodded. As I watched it it started to turn kind of gold-colored, and then it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes at most. It started to almost flow back towards Izuku. It kind of collected on him, coating him. She paused and took a breath. And then it turned into this, gold dust, I want to say it looked almost like glitter. The doctor nodded, scribbling vigorously into his notebook. This was because the doctor was fascinated with quirks, and this one was the most interesting one he'd seen yet. Part of him wondered if he could write about this experience on his blog. After a moment or two, the glitter that's Inko, I gotta do her voice. After a minute or two, the glitter exploded, and Izuku was fine. The doctor was still writing in his book, but he muttered, "Fascinating, absolutely fascinating," and with a loud clap, he finally closed the notebook. "Well, that is most definitely the result of a late-formed quirk. And on top of that, I think this is perhaps the most interesting quirk I have ever heard of." Inko was a little taken aback at the doctor's outgoing response, but she sat up a bit straighter at the mention of a quirk. This is such a rare mutation, though. I've never heard of a quirk this interesting, but going by my knowledge of high-powered quirks, I'm nearly positive that there must be another aspect to it. The doctor turned to Izuku, lowering his head. "You said that it didn't hurt, huh?" His voice had taken on a lighter tone while speaking to the child. Midoriya shook his head vigorously. There's a typo in this fic. Clutching a red bouncy ball to his chest. Lifting his head, the doctor continued talking to Inko. "That could be it. It's possible that he won't feel any pain for the rest of his life. However, that's not necessarily a good thing. It could mean that he'll have to be very careful with normal activities in order to not harm his body. We feel pain for a reason, and suppressing that can have unwanted consequences." Inko furrowed her eyebrows in response. "It should be pretty easy to test, though," he said cheerfully. Before turning to Midoriya again, the doctor then leaned forward and gave him a small pinch on his arm. "That hurt at all?" Midoriya shook his head. "Izuku, I'm going to pinch you again a little harder, but stop me if it starts to hurt, okay?" "Okay," Midoriya said. The doctor took his arm once more and gave a hard pinch. Midoriya didn't even flinch, even when the doctor sat back up and revealed his arm to be red and 2 distinct marks. "Well, that just about proves it. Seems like his nerves have been altered because of his quirk. His brain will no longer register pain. However, feeling pain is crucial in daily life. It tells us to stop touching that hot pan, to not walk on our hurt leg, and such. He'll have to be very careful to not harm himself, and once he does, to be very careful to not injure himself even more." The doctor was energetically scribbling in his notebook as he spoke, but he stopped when he saw Inko wringing her hands nervously, eyebrows furrowed. It probably won't be that bad. He seems to have a healing aspect to his quirk, if this morning was any indication. So we'll just have to wait and see." "I have a quirk?" Midoriya said tentatively after a moment of silence. "You do, and it's a very interesting one," the doctor told him softly. Midoriya tilted his head thoughtfully, and after considering it for a moment, his eyes lit up and he jumped to his feet, yelling, "I'm gonna be a hero!" Inko looked like she was about to faint. And that is Chapter 1, Part 1 of Hysterical. I'll probably film Part 2 of... I'll probably film that later. Tell me what you think. I really like this fic. It's pretty funny. The author said it's kind of a crack fic.